Welcome, everybody. Can you guys hear us? Awesome. That's that's a good basis.
Hello,
Welcome,
hello.
welcome everybody in the live stream. It's day 2 at Guitar Summit Talk, and I think this man needs no introduction. Doug Aldrich, everybody.
Hallo, wie geht es dir? How are you guys? Doing good? Good.
Now even better.
Thank you for a great turnout today. You guys look amazing.
So you are obviously mostly known for your work with Whitesnake, but then again, I have to check my list. You participated in so many things. You played with Dio, Lion, Hurricane, House of Lords, Revolution Saints. You were actually performing in a production show in Las Vegas. You recorded 4 solo albums. You played with Glenn Hughes, and you're currently a member of the band The Dead Daisies.
That's a lot of work,
It's
right
most
there.
like, is it everything? I hope I.
There's probably a few more things in there. It's always, there's always a session here or there. I've been so lucky, in my life to. I was thinking about it today. It's like, when I moved out of my house when I was 18, I got to play guitar and I loved it. And I woke up today and I'm thinking, I'm here in Germany. I get to play my guitar and I still love it. And I'm a lot older.
Yeah, it's
And it's great. It's so amazing how music takes us, either in your brain or in physical, so many places.
takes us to places. Yeah, it's true. So if we roll back a little bit in time, I've read that it was pretty much Jeff Beck or listening to Jeff Beck that inspired you to pick up a guitar and pursue that. Yeah, I wanna play as well. But while you were starting to learn, who else was there that inspired you? I mean, Jeff Beck is, that was
Yeah.
the trigger, but there were so many. I mean, and that must have been the mid '70s. So there was so much more guitar players around. Who else had an impact on you?
Well, I didn't have a record player or a cassette player or anything, but my sisters both had them. And so I would go look at their record collection, and that's where I saw the Blow by Blow record, and I go, whoa, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And it sounded amazing, and it was like so different that it didn't have any vocals. I never really had heard that before. But so I loved his guitar playing immediately. But she also had Peter Frampton and some stuff like Stevie Wonder, Chicago, all kinds of different stuff. Allman Brothers was a big one. And then you remember on the radio, you were hearing songs like Smoke on the Water and Purple Haze by Hendrix. So all that stuff was getting in my ear, and there was a lot of pop music too,
It's true, yeah.
from the 70s pop or melodic rock, soft rock. That was on there. But I think Jimmy Page was the next big hit because
Yeah.
those riffs,
That was different.
the Zeppelin 2 with Whole Lotta Love and just that whole album, top to bottom, was just so cool. And that was really what I zoned out on a lot, that and Beck. But later, of course, everybody came into the picture.
It's true. Yeah, you mentioned a couple of bands, not necessarily like single guitar players. You mentioned a couple of bands, and the whole like Guitar Hero thing later. It definitely exploded way more than at that time. When you started, did you have sort of a practice routine, or was it really just listening to and playing along to records?
So in the very beginning, I couldn't do much. I mean, I started, back in the 70s, there wasn't any distraction in the summertime. There was nothing to do if, say, for example, your mates went away for the summer. So you're sitting there and you're like, what can I do? You can skateboard or something. But my younger sister had a classical guitar and she had a book with some chords.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing I started. And I really loved the sound of it. The nylon strings was beautiful.
Yeah.
I love that. Then I got an electric guitar and I was listening to electric rock and stuff, but I couldn't play that. I couldn't play anything. I was just still, I played the funniest version of Smoke on the Water that with the wrong chords, but it was emulating the riff, but
Yeah.
just in the key of E. And then I would do a little thing with the A where I slid a half step. Anyways, it took me a long time. Little by little, somebody would show me something. When I learned the bar chord, where you can move your chord up and down the neck. Most of you guys are guitar players, but for those who aren't, that was a mind blower.
Yeah.
And then you learn a little lick, or you see somebody do something, and little by little by little. That's how it was for me. I was definitely a rhythm guitar player through most of high school.
Yeah. And and that's obviously the difference with today. Today, the only thing you need to do is you go on YouTube and hopefully somebody competent, tells you this is how you play Smoke on the Water and this is how you play Whole Lotta Love, for example, and then you pick it up. And that was, obviously, that didn't exist in the 70s when you started. It was
No, you had to do it by ear. You had to listen to the record, and you'd listen to it, and you'd use your ear, and you'd kind of move your hand around and kind of little by little find out, that sounds like the same timbre. Oh, wait, I see if I do that, then it makes this next part easier if I do it here versus over here.
Yeah.
So it's just by experimentation, like anything. I think doing it by ear is very important.
Yeah.
Of course, I've even gone on YouTube and looked at how did Jimmy Page do that thing, or what was the tuning, or whatever, the Rain song. But doing it by ear is really good, because sometimes
Good training.
yeah, you listen to the album. There was a song I was trying to learn the other day. It's 50 Ways to Leave Your Lover by Paul Simon.
Yeah.
Just because the chords in the verse are so cool, the little inversions, or it's just like a little harmony part. And I was watching on YouTube and it didn't sound right.
Yeah.
So then I went back to the record and listened to it, and then I started between the YouTube, which was partly right, and then my ear, I was able to get it where I thought it sounds better. It sounds
Okay.
right. And so, it's funny too, because you guys know with the Dead Daisies, we have a drummer called Brian Tishy. Have you ever heard of him? Yeah. So Brian's one of the all-time greatest drummers. He's insane. His pocket is so deep, and he makes whoever plays with him, he plays better. But he's a secret amazing guitar player too. So he bought recently, last year, he bought a Eddie Van Halen, the black and white one, not Frankenstein, but the black and white one. And he's on this kick right now where if he's not playing drums, he's in his room learning Van Halen. And he goes on YouTube, and he'll like send me a text, and he'll be like, yeah, this dude's pretty good. I think he's got everything, but there's one small 16th note. He's doing an upstroke, and I think it's a downstroke. You can hear it, and he gets really passionate about it.
Almost nerdy.
It's awesome. And then he'll send me another YouTube clip and go, this guy's not happening. No, it's wrong. It's all wrong, And hey, check this guy out. Listen how sloppy this is. Or he'll go, whoa, this guy is he's nailed everything. So it's something fun, to do.
So then, moving on. At some point, you finished high school, and then all of a sudden you're auditioning for Kiss. How did that go?
It was good.
I mean, I know how it went.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, but how was that had to be a surreal situation. You come out of high school, and suddenly you're in that room with the guys, and
people might think hey, you didn't get the job with Kiss, but I look at it like that is a great experience that I was able to learn from.
Yeah.
And it really kicked me in the butt, because so I moved to Los Angeles. I'm just a kid. I don't know how to manage money. All my money goes away.
you're super green in the head.
I was 18, but I was more like really 14. And didn't know how to pay bills, didn't know anything. And so I got a job at a music store finally, but I was playing clubs immediately. I found a band. We formed a band, and we were playing it. It was called Gazzari's on the Sunset Strip, and it was a cool club that had 4 levels, and there'd be 3 stages on each level, and the bands would just take turns playing all night long. And so we played, and a girl came and said that she was Eric Carr, the drummer of Kiss.
His girlfriend, right?
Girlfriend.
Yeah.
And then a couple weeks later, he came, and I didn't believe it, but he came, and she said, I think you should audition for Kiss. I think they would like you. And Eric was really nice, and he called me I didn't have a phone at the time, but he called me at the music store and said, come to the record plant, which the record plant is where so many amazing records from the 70s were recorded. And so I go down there, and I meet Gene and Paul. And remember, at this time, nobody had seen them without their makeup. So I felt really nervous about looking them in the face. It was awkward. Like, I felt guilty. You're not supposed to, but they were very, they were very nice. And I played, I met Gene, and I was playing on one of their songs. They were working on Creatures of the Night album. Yeah. And there was a song I was playing on, and Gene goes, Doug, do you ever play the major scale? And I'm like, major scale? What's that? And he goes, do, re, mi, fa, so. I go, oh, yeah, I know that. And I immediately thought of Michael Schenker, the great Michael Schenker, because by that time I had gotten really into UFO and Michael Schenker group, and Michael was known for Mixolydian mode, so it's kind of a major sound. So I started playing, some licks Michael Schenker style, or whatever. And he goes, okay, good. So he wrote down the songs, and he said, we're going to jam next week. Is that cool? And I was like, sure. So I go to the jam, and it's 4 stacks of Marshalls for me. And I had never played it with such a rig, and it was incredible playing, these songs with the guys, and Paul Stanley's in front of me shaking, and just, it was surreal. But I got done with the audition, and then they called me back a couple weeks later. And this is important because people always go like, how can somebody get a gig, or how can you get a job, whatever it is you want? It's very important to be socially comfortable with each other.
Yes.
Like, me and you are cool.
Yeah.
Like, we can talk. But at that time, I was a kid. These guys were rock stars. I mean, we did jam the second time, but then they were kind of talking about amongst themselves about their lives, and I was just like, I have nothing to add, because I didn't have a phone. I had nothing. And these guys they're talking about who they're dating, and they're famous famous actresses, and hanging with other rock stars.
Okay.
I think that at that point they realized this guy, he's a decent player. He could play good, but I don't think we could be on a bus with this guy for more than 15 minutes, because it's not a good hang. So you really need to relate to the people that you want to work with, and if it's a good fit, then you can work together a long time.
Yeah, it's good advice. Very good advice. Question band related. Most of the bands that you were in, I would consider to have like a wide lineup. So there's 2 guitar players, a bass player, drummer, singer, and maybe even someone playing the keys. Yeah. But you also did a tour with Glenn Hughes, and that was a power trio.
Yeah.
What did you like more? Or if it's like 50-50, where do you think you would feel comfortable on a long run?
I mean, it's always easy when you're just a single guitar player, because you can basically you can do whatever feels good at the moment. You don't have to stick to, like, maybe you change an inversion, but if you got 2 guitar players, if you don't tell him that you're doing that, he might get confused, or it might sound wrong. But if you're just the guitar player by yourself with the bass, there's more freedom. There's more pressure.
Yeah.
But the freedom is beautiful. And a trio, especially, that was, virtually what Dio was a trio with Ronnie singing.
Yeah.
And then he had Scott playing keyboards. Whitesnake was the complete opposite. Keyboards, 2 guitars. It was a lot of information going off the stage. But the thing about playing with Glenn at that time was I had gotten out of Whitesnake and was camped out in Las Vegas for a little bit. I had some stuff I had to take care of at home. So then I was getting burned out on Vegas. It was so hot, I couldn't. It was just crazy hot, like the hottest. I don't know if anybody's been to Vegas. And I was every time I'd go back to California, I thought, man, I gotta go home. And Glenn called me and goes, hey, Doug, I'm doing a tour. My normal guy, Soren, is not available. I really need somebody I can trust. And it's just going to be a trio. And I thought, that sounds great. It's kind of like his original band, Trapeze, if you guys know Trapeze. And it was insane. It was so cool because we would basically have an idea of how we were going to start each song, but it was free form. And there's nothing like that when you're on stage playing and you're playing off each other. I do something and then the drummer reacts and then I go back and then Glenn's in the pocket and then Glenn's bass tone is like, it's a ferocious bass tone. It's so massive.
Yeah, I've heard it once live. It's
So you really don't even
terrifying.
need a guitar.
yeah. No.
There'd be times he would just kind of walk up to the thing and the guy would put his bass on all of a sudden. And it was like, wow. You know, and then the drums would kick in. I was like, okay, you don't,
Where's my space?
you don't, it was great because I could just do it whatever on top. But it was very rewarding and it felt great to be back playing live after being off the road for a while.
Yeah. You mentioned Vegas. Here's another one thing versus the other question. 6 nights a week playing in Vegas,
Yeah.
or and being obviously on the same stage and same setup and playing the same, or touring and playing 6 nights a week.
I mean, there's good things to both because at that time, basically, I had gone through a split up in a relationship and I had my son with me. So that gig in Vegas was perfect because they gave us like 2-room suite, a card that I could eat at the hotel 24 hours a day, get a hamburger at 4 in the morning, whatever. And my son, you know, Dad, I want cereal. Okay, it's 6 a.m. Let's go. So
That sounds nice.
it was perfect. And then like the gig itself was like 2 hours, do a signing, and it was playing with Howard Leese from Heart,
Yeah.
Hugh McDonald from Bon Jovi, and Jay Shellen from Yes, a bunch of great singers. So it was good for a while. But as I said, I just couldn't take that. It was just too hot. And plus, doing that gig like that, 6 nights a week, there's not really much room for improvisation.
No.
You can sneak a little bit in here and there, but it's difficult. It kind of messes with your head a little bit.
That's why I thought about the question, because you said playing in a trio obviously adds freedom to the whole thing, and that is the complete opposite. So that's why.
But I'll say this: as I'm now old, touring is harder, you know, and it's sometimes I go, how am I gonna make it? But it works out.
It works out.
Just try to take, I try not to do too many bad things or whatever, and try to sleep, But the travel, that's what Marco Mendoza's here in the show. If you get to see him, tell him I'm looking for him. But Marco used to always say, it's not, I'll play the gig for free. I get paid for the travel.
Yeah.
Gig is like, I'll do that for nothing. But because that's where it beats you up,
Yeah, that's true.
catching flights, getting on the bus,
Sleeping on the bus. Oh.
Well, at some times it's really convenient. With Glenn, we just slept on the bus. We would wake up and just open the door and be like, light. There's a club right there where we're playing. Go find a Starbucks, get a coffee, and grab a shower, and then just back on the bus. It was pretty easy.
Yeah.
But when you got to go through airports and security, like with Whitesnake, we would play a gig and then the next day fly, and then the next day play a gig, and those travel days it wasn't like a day off. It was even harder than a show day.
Oh.
But it's all good. Like I say, I'm grateful to be here with you guys right now. It's awesome.
So, getting into the nerdy gear kind of a part of the interview. So, looking at guitars over the years, you once had a Jackson signature model, actually, which was sort of power strat.
Yeah. Super Strat or whatever.
Super Strat, Power Strat.
Yeah.
Exactly. But at some point, people associated you on stage with a Les Paul and the Marshall, which is like very classic thing. So at some point, you went there.
Yeah. I can explain.
Yeah.
So basically,
Good.
my very beginning guitar was a gold top. My very first good guitar was a gold top Les Paul, which I got for $300. It was a 1973 Deluxe.
Wow.
Killer guitar, and I had it refretted and put in. I had humbuckers put in. I know it's bad, but DiMarzio was making the double cream humbuckers, and they looked cool and they were hot.
The super distortions.
Yes.
Yeah.
Super
Right.
distortion
Yeah.
at PAF. So I had that Les Paul all done up, And then, I love that guitar. I love the Allman Brothers. I love the sound of Jimmy Page's guitars, and everybody who played Les Paul, I loved it. But then Eddie Van Halen comes out,
Oh,
and it was just like, I wanted to get a tremolo bar, you know, I wanted a wang bar. So I ended up eventually selling that Les Paul, and I got a really nice, well, it was a good Strat, you know. And it took me a little while to figure out that it wasn't staying in tune. Eventually, I figured I kept pressing it, and eventually it went in tune. And I was like, okay, how does that happen? So then when I figured out you tune it as you're using the bar, and then you can
you can fine tune it. Yeah.
yeah, you can get it in to stay in tune. But I went through that, moved to Los Angeles, and I've been a huge fan of Randy Rhoads.
Yeah.
And I saw him play, and I was just like, that guy I just related to him. I still, you know, I mean, I really loved him. And I got to Los Angeles and found out that there was Jackson guitars, and I ordered a Jackson, and I didn't want to play a Randy Rhoads model because I already was trying to, you know, I had looked a little bit close to him a little bit, so I didn't want to play that cool V.
Right.
But I got a Jackson Strat, and had a humbucker, so it was kind of the sound of a Les Paul with a tremolo bar, and it was great. And eventually I got to meet Grover, and we hit it off, and it was really cool. He really, we just were like brothers, and he helped me out a lot, gave me a couple guitars over the years. And eventually the Japanese decided to make a signature
Right.
model. And then eventually Grover Jackson left. And when Grover left, I hung in there for a while, but it just wasn't the same. And then I started playing I love Strats. I went back to, you know, some of the solo stuff I was doing. I was using a Strat. I think during the 90s, you know, like the heavy rock was not as popular, so the Strat was really something different. Hendrix, Beck, that whole thing. But eventually, you know, I got in Dio, and I needed that Super Strat again and a Les Paul
Right.
for the heavier stuff, like the Heaven and Hell and the Sabbath stuff. The Les Paul was definitely the heaviest guitar I
The
had.
better guitar for the job. Yeah.
And I used the Les Paul in the studio. I used the Les Paul on one side and a Strat on the other, and it worked out really well.
Nice.
But when I got in Whitesnake, David said, "I'm really happy that you're playing Les Pauls because I love that. I really, you know." And I was
like a classic look somehow.
well, it's just, and it's a classic sound, and
Yeah.
I had really gotten back comfortable with the Les Paul again, so I was fine with that.
Yeah.
I did use a Tele sometimes or a Strat in the beginning of my time with Whitesnake, but eventually it was all Les Paul, and Reb did the tremolo stuff and Strat stuff mostly.
Yeah. And then moving a little bit forward, actually in recent years, people have seen you with ESPs.
ESP was a situation where we were working with ESP, the Dead Daisies, and they said, you know, is there anything that you need? And I said, not really, you know, really. But at some point we were running through some songs, and there was a couple of songs where I needed a little bit of a single coil sound or a little bit different sound than the Les Paul.
Right.
And so I first started with an ESP Ronnie Wood guitar, which is a killer guitar.
Yeah, it is.
Really, just I've got this amazing spanky tone to it. And then they were like being really nice with me. They were like, look, let us try to do something with you with the Telecaster shape. And we did a 2 humbucker guitar, and it's amazing, but it's just not like my gold tops are really where my heart's at. You know, it kind of reminds me of when I was a kid. It's my guitar's in my bedroom right now, just like it was. You know, so I kind of, like, aesthetically, it makes me feel happy to see a gold top.
Right.
I love sunbursts. I got a black Les Paul, I got a white Les Paul, I got a bunch of different ones, but the gold is the one. And it's so funny because when I first saw that original gold top, the 73, my sister's boyfriend was selling it, and he said, it's a gold top. And I thought, that must be the Jimmy Page guitar. It's gold in the middle of Jimmy's guitar.
Yeah.
I didn't know what a sunburst. I didn't know that it was called a sunburst. So I go, gold top, cool. So I get there and I open the case and I'm looking at it. It's a real Gibson. And I look down and I'm like, whoa, what color is that? He goes, that's a gold top. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's cool. It's a Les Paul, you know.
Yeah.
And I thought it was really, I thought it was kind of ugly, the color. But now I feel like it's the most beautiful guitar Les Paul color that they make. You know,
Yeah.
and other guitars, if you give me a Strat, if it's a gold Strat, it's got more chance I'm going to play it. I don't know why.
Right. Yeah. Each to their own. A little bit of bling bling isn't too bad. um, t- uh, do you imagine you could intensify the relationship with ESP, or is that something is not on the cards? Like, I'm talking signature model, of course.
We talked about stuff, but I really didn't need to do anything. I'm
Okay.
really comfortable with what I have. The one thing that I did recently do was a friend of mine is a luthier called Leo Scala, and Leo,
Oh yeah, I've heard the name.
he's a great
Yeah.
guy. He's a master builder. He works with Gibson part on the side, doing very special things for them. You'll see some of his guitars, but he built me a guitar, and it was a beautiful guitar, amazing. It wasn't beating out my Les Paul.
Okay.
And so I just said, Leo, this guitar is worth, it's priceless, but I really would need maybe you build me a solid body. And he built me a solid body, and I love it. And it's gold, of course. And my daughter's name is Ruby, and he named it the Golden Ruby, and that's been the only other guitar really that I've been kind of going for. With the Dead Daisies, keep in mind too, we travel light, so I might bring an ESP or a Strat or something if it was a different gig, but I'm only bringing 2 guitars on the stage, and I carry one,
Right.
and that's it. So I need a backup for the Les Paul, and I want a Les Paul style to practice on it in my room, and so that's all there is.
Right.
But the guys at ESP are great. They're a great company, and obviously they've got some of the greatest guitar players working for ESP, and
Yeah.
you know.
It's true. Are you a pedal person at all, or is it just guitar, amp, cranking the hell out of it and go?
Well, for recording, always straight.
Yeah.
As much as possible. Maybe I might, if I'm going to do a solo and I need a wah, sometimes I might put a boost pedal if it's a different sound or something. I just found with Blackstar that the clean channel takes fuzz pedals, and it's just it's really cool 70s, 60s, 70s kind of, sounds like the speaker's ripping. It's just really really badass.
Right.
But yeah, I love pedals on stage. I've been through phases where I had too many pedals.
Oh really? Okay.
I wanted everything. I wanted to have an octave down, an octave up with a wah, flanger, phaser, everything. I wanted everything, but it started to. I didn't. Now there's ways around this, but this was before loops, and
Right.
so I would lose signal going through so many pedals, just old school.
Oh, and high end.
Yeah.
Signal is going to be completely dull.
So I figured out that less is more.
Yeah.
And I basically will go through phases where I swap out different pedals for different times where I feel like I want something else. But I always have a Dunlop wah,
Yeah.
always.
Okay.
I love it. It's just ever since the Michael Schenker and
He uses wah a lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's true. It's true. Yeah, less is more. Ingrid Malmsteen would disagree with you, I guess. You know his famous quote, right?
Yeah.
More is more.
Do you know what's funny? In my pocket, I was going to play a joke on the Blackstar guy, on the boss. I wrote, in my pocket right here is a note that says more is more. 'Cause I was going to go Blackstar, more is more. And anyway.
So, going back a little bit to music, because obviously, and the time that you're participating in the music industry, a lot has changed.
Yes.
But my question goes towards, what kind of music are you listening these days?
I listen to still my, I'll do a deep dive on something that I'll take a break. I'll listen to say Led Zeppelin for a long time and really get deep into it, and then I'll get burned out a little bit and take a break, and I'll move on to something else. But I still listen to the classic guitar players. I mean, Stevie Ray and Van Halen, and even guys like Pat Travers I used to love when I was a kid, and Rush. That stuff was great. But always Zeppelin, Beck, Clapton, Pete Townsend. I never realized how amazing a guitar player Pete Townsend was until, 10, 15, 20 years ago.
Right.
When I was a kid, I didn't realize what he was doing was so cool, and his songwriting was so amazing. And then the same thing with David Gilmour. I mean, I love those records, but I wasn't like I wouldn't say David Gilmour was on my top 10 when I was a kid, but now he is.
Yeah.
So it just changes, but I love that stuff. I still love 70s rock, because it reminds me of when I was a kid. Every song reminds me of that time. There's a station that I play at my house. It's on Sirius XM. It's called Yacht Rock.
Yeah.
You know it?
No. I don't.
Okay. Anyway,
Sadly, no. It's a regional.
No.
It's a regional thing. My
Okay.
question was also because it seems like sometimes when I listen to radio here in this country, I'm losing hope because it's. Yeah, you guys know what I'm talking about. It's the music sounds so synthetic in a way, and at least in the US, there's like so many radio stations that are specialized on, hey, this is rock, this is 70s rock, this is progressive rock. And you have so much more choice. Anything from like recently that you discovered where you're like, that's a great album?
well, there's a few bands that check that box. Rival Sons has been around for a while now, but that's like I always loved that kind of southern sound from when I was a kid of listening to Leonard Skinner and Allman
Right.
Brothers, Doobie Brothers, all those brothers bands, and so Rival Sons is great. There's some of the guitar players that are out right now. There's a guy online called Art Menez that is just incredible. Philip Sayce is an incredible bass player.
This guy rips it. It's
He's
unbelievable.
he's out of this world.
Yeah.
Jared James Nichols.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of new guys that are doing stuff that's great, and they're getting attention. It's called Dirty Honey is getting attention on the radio in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
This band Dirty Honey, and there's a few. There's fortunately a little bit of support, like you said, on regular radio,
Yeah.
and then on the what do you call it? Cable internet radio.
Yeah.
Subscription radio.
Yeah.
You get sometimes you can find some new music, but then you have the other stations that are playing what's current right now.
Yeah.
And we've all heard those chords before. They just put change it up a little bit, a different lyric and a new singer, and it sounds great because it sounded great before when the other band did it.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Last question before we need to wrap it up. What's in the future? What's happening? Are you involved in any album recordings? Are tours coming up? So anything you can tell us about
Yes.
what's happening this year or maybe the next year?
Yeah. So, well, first of all, I am here with Black Star Amps, and I'm really, really impressed with what they're doing, and really happy to be a part of their team. It's just recently, the last 6 months or so, and so they're working with the band, the Dead Daisies, and we've been started to tour already this year. We toured in the U.S. and did a handful of shows in the U.S., and we did a really fun run in Canada. Hadn't been to Canada for a while, but we had
Right.
great shows in Canada, and the complete backline is Black Star.
Nice.
And and they're just it just sounds great, really responsive, really quick, valve amps, and the bass rig as well. So the Dead Daisies are touring. We're off right now, but we start at the end of next month. We start in Japan, and we then come to Europe, to some other parts of Europe. We're coming to Germany in the beginning of December, end of November, beginning of December. So definitely, guys, check out the Dead Daisies socials and the .com and all that stuff, because you can check the dates. I'd love to, the band is on fire right now. We've got John Corabi is back. John Corabi from Motley Crue, and he really put the most time into the Dead Daisies of anyone. It's kind of his band, in
Right.
a sense. And John is just an amazing, talented frontman. If you've ever seen him play, either acoustic or with the Dead Daisies, he puts on a great show, and everybody walks out with a smile on their face, and that's what's important.
Yeah.
And then we also got Michael Devin from Whitesnake, who has come in, and Michael's he's just he was actually David Coverdale's right hand man. After I left, he kind of, was the guy that David leaned on for a lot of things. And Michael's a great singer,
Right.
an amazing melodic, heavy bass player, crazy intelligent guy. I mean, he's like got one of those IQs it's off the charts.
Off the charts, yeah.
When you spend 5 minutes with him, you're like, I would never have thought he knew all this, but he's great. And Brian Tisci on drums and me and David Lowy on guitar. If you come out, I guarantee you'll have a good time. We want to see you. We got to, get live music back happening again as much, it's already happening, but
Yeah.
we're coming back. So we want to see you guys, and then who knows what next year, maybe we'll do some recording.
Sounds like a great plan.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you, Frank. Thank you,
Thank
guys.
you guys for chiming in. Thanks everybody who followed the live stream as well, and yeah, enjoy the rest of the day.
Yeah, have a great day. Thanks, guys.